I was going to start from Rav Ashi.
That's 25, right?
Yeah, so just the last three words of Chaf Dalet Amud Beis. Either way, the Mishnah says, Ein madlikim b'shemen sreifa b'yom tov. Shemen sreifa is truma tamea. Oil from truma tamea, you're not allowed to burn that on Yom Tov. The Gemara is trying to figure out why. So we're up to Rav Ashi's reason. The last line in Chaf Dalet Amud Beis. Rav Ashi Omar Shabbosayin Esei v'havilei Yom Tov Esei v'lois Esei v'ein Esei doiches lois Esei v'Esei b'Yom Tov. I'm sorry, v'ein Esei doiches lois Esei v'Esei. So there's a mitzvah Esei on Yom Tov as well as a mitzvah lois Esei not to do work. So Shabbosayin is the mitzvah Esei. So there's a mitzvah Esei and a mitzvah lois Esei. Whereas burning the shemen truma, the truma tamei is only a mitzvah sasei, and a mitzvah sasei doesn't push off a mitzvah sasei and a lois sasei. An essay pushes off just the lois sasei. So if you would have had just the lois sasei, then it would have been okay. But since Yom Tov is an essay and a lois sasei, you're not allowed to burn the truma tamei on Yom Tov. So the Gemara says, "B'Yom Tov hu da'asir habechol shaper dami." The suggestion is that you're allowed to burn the truma tamea for your own pleasure on the regular day, on the weekday. My time, what's the source that you could do that? Amarav kishem shemitzvah l'isreifa kachim shenit mukach mitzvah l'isreifa said truma shenit tameis. We have a mitzvah just like you have to burn kachim that became tamei. You also have a mitzvah to burn truma that became tamei. And the Torah says b'shas biura tehanem mimena, and the Torah says you can enjoy it when you're burning it. Heichan amra Torah. Where does the Torah say that you could burn, that you can enjoy the truma tamei when you're burning it? I have given to you the mishmeres truma. What? Trumotai. The safeguard of my trumais in plural. So what does it mean when it says trumaisai? B'shtei trumas akasim adaber. I'm giving you two types of truma. Achas truma tahira. One kind of truma I'm giving you is that when it's pure, you give it to the kohen eats it. V'achas truma tamei. And another kind of giving to you is the truma tamei, where you could burn it for your own pleasure. You can cook. You could burn it underneath your topshil when you're cooking something, or you need it for the light. Whatever it is, you're allowed to have enjoyment from the flame. Another source that you are allowed to be nehene. You can have pleasure from burning the truma tamea midrabi abo. Dam Rav Abo Rav Yechanan lo bi'arti mimenu b'tamei. So when a person he says about the meiser sheni. Meiser Sheni. This is the vidui that a person says in the base of Migdash about Meiser Sheni. He says, I didn't consume it while I was tame, or it was tame. So that's part of the vidui. Mimenu iatamavir. So what we want to infer from this statement, from it I didn't burn. But you are allowed to burn the oil of truma that became tamei. So, because the word mimenu is coming to exclude something else. So, ma'aser sheni, this rule applies. You're not allowed to have any personal consumption for ma'aser sheni when it's tamei. Something else, though, must be okay. And what's that something else? It's going to be truma tamei. So the Gemara asks, maybe the something else is something else. Perhaps the inference should apply to kodesh shenitma, a korban that became tamei. That when you're burning the korban, you should be able to have enjoyment from it. So the Gemara says, Lav kal v'chaymer ma meiser hakal. If meiser sheni, which is so lenient, relatively speaking, so you have this prohibition of consuming it in any way when it's tamei, kodesh, a korban, chamur, which is so strict, like kol shekain, then all the more so, it should be prohibited to have any enjoyment when you're burning it. So the Gemara says, Yachi trumanami le mekal v'chaymer. who the truma is also more strict than ma'aser sheni in many ways. So the Gemara says, no, but haksiv mimenu. But we have the word mimenu is telling me that something out there is okay to burn and enjoy it. So we have to say that it's truma, even though truma is more strict than ma'aser sheni. So the Gemara says, Amara Isam. So what led you to believe that the mimenu applies to the truma and not to the kodesh? It's because you have a pasuk telling you that something out there is okay. You're allowed to burn it and enjoy it when you're burning it, and it could either be korban or it could be truma. So what led you to believe that it was going on the truma? So the Gemara says, Mistabra, it's logical kodesh loimim matinan, that we're not going to exclude kodesh. We're not going to allow you to burn kodesh, a korban, and enjoy the fire. Shekain siman panak x. It's a list of things that are strict about a korban over truma. These are a list of things that are stricter about a korban more than truma. And the Gemara goes through this list now. Pigul. One thing is that a korban, as opposed to truma, there's a concept of pigul, which means that when you're shechting the animal or doing any of the different avodas of the animal, if you think that you're going to eat it outside of the time, then you ruin the animal, even if you end up eating it within the time, and you can get kares for eating the animal. Another thing is nicer. You have a time limit. After the time limit, it turns into nicer. So these things do not apply to truma. These are unique to korbanos. The next thing is korban. It's called a korban as opposed to truma, which is not called a korban. Mi'ila. The next thing is mi'ila, that if you have enjoyment from it, you have to bring a korban. V'kares, you get kares if you're, let's say, a zar, a non-kohen who eats it. The aser l'oinen. It's aser for an oinen, a person who's in mourning, is not allowed to eat a korban, whereas truma and oinen is allowed to eat it. Adrabah, the Gemara has another list for truma to try to prove that truma is so strict. Truma loimim matina, we shouldn't exclude truma and allow you to enjoy the fire when you're burning truma to meshikain machpaz. It has its own list there. Simen misa. So the first, the mem is misa. You're chayiv misa b'dei shemaim if you're a non-kohen who eats truma. Chaimesh, if you eat it, you have to pay a fifth over and above the principal amount of what it's worth. What? If you eat it b'shaygeg, you eat it unknowingly. Ve'ein la pidyain, and the truma has no pidyain. There's no way to redeem it. Whereas a korban, you could redeem. For example, where it gets a blemish before the shechita, you could redeem it. Ve'asura lezarim, and it's always aser to zarim, to non-kohanim. Whereas a korban, it could be mutter to zarim after you go through the whole process of shechting it and then sprinkling the blood, like meiser behema or taida or shlamim. There's lots of korbanos that even non-kohanim can consume. So we have our own list for truma. So the Gemara says, no, doesn't matter. Hanach nefishin. The list for kachim, for a korban, is longer than the list for truma, and therefore logic says that we should pick the less strict thing if we're trying to find something that you are allowed to enjoy when you're burning. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar Amar Kra, he says a different source, Titain loy. Loy v'loy lo'ayroi. Michlal debas ayreihu. I'm sorry, I skipped a line here. V'boiseima kodesh chamor shekain anush kares. Another, even if the list would have been the same, the fact that in the korban list we have kares, and in the list for the truma there is no kares, that already is a determinative factor. And the korban would, it already tips the scales in favor of the korban being more strict, because there is no concept of kares, which means you die young and your children die, as opposed to truma, where it's the worst that can happen to you is misa b'dei shemayim, which is dying young, but nothing happens to your kids. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar, he has a different source that you are allowed to enjoy the fire when you're burning the truma tamei. Amar kra titain loy, you should give to the kohen the truma. Loy v'loy lo'ayrai. And we darshan from the word to him. Loy, to him, to him and not for his fire, not for his light. Michlal, so you can infer the bas ayrehu, that truma timea potentially, right, is something that you could use for your light. The fact that we're saying don't give it to the Kohen for his light means that otherwise truma timea could be used for your light, for using the flame for your own personal benefit. Rabbi Shmuel Omer. So this going on the Mishnah, Rabbi Shmuel says that you're not allowed to light on Shabbos with each run. Okay. So and that's something that's something that comes out of Zephas. What? Yeah, it stinks. My time, why are you not allowed to use this for lighting your candles on Shabbos? Amar Rav mitech sherechei ra, because it smells bad. Gezerah shema yenichena v'yete. Maybe you'll just leave the room. So the place where the lady's going to light the Shabbos candle is going to stink. You're going to leave the room. Amar le Abai v'yete. So Abai says, so who cares? So leave the room. Why is it important that the material used to light the candles is such that it's not going to encourage you to leave the room? Because there's an obligation to light the candles, and it's linked to the meal. It's so you should enjoy your meal more. So if you're going to leave the room, then we're going to miss the whole purpose of it. The Amar of Nachman bar Zavda Amar Rav of Amar Rav Nachman bar Rav Amar Rav Hadlakas Ner b'Shabbos Chayva. He also says the same thing, that it's an obligation to light a candle. And Rashi explains because it's Kavod Shabbos, because it's a better meal when you have the candles that are there. Washing your hands, your feet in warm water, Arvis on Erev Shabbos, taking a shower is Rishus. That's optional. So we're just comparing. The candles is a chayva, that's an obligation. The shower is an option. Vani Aimer, and I say mitzvah, that it's a mitzvah to take a shower. So we have three madregas over here. We have Rishus, which means it's an option. Mitzvah means you still get a mitzvah to do it, but it's not an obligation. And then on the top is chayva. So just in terms of the terminology, so he wants to put shower in the middle category. It's a mitzvah to take a shower on Erev Shabbos.
Shoiva specifically means?
What?
Third category shoiva.
Chayva means you have to. It's an obligation. No excuses. My mitzvah. What's the mitzvah of taking a shower? This was the minhag of Rabbi Yehuda, the son of Eloi. Erev Shabbos mevim lo areva melecham, and they would bring him this big bowl full of hot water. And he would wash his face, his hands, his feet. And he would sit down wrapped up in his talis. And he looked like an angel. So that's the source. So we see this great person took a shower, or whatever the equivalent in those days of a shower. That's the source that it is a mitzvah. It's for Kavod Shabbos, basically. His students were hiding the corners of their begadim. They were tucking their what would have been tzitzis. They didn't have tzitzis connected to the particular garment. See, he was wearing, stinim is referring to pishtan. He was wearing something made out of linen, and the tzitzis is always wool. So the wool tzitzis were connected to the linen beged that he was wearing, which is fine according to Rabbi Yehuda bar Eloi, because that's one of the exceptions in the Torah to the mitzvah of shatnez. That's one of the exceptions in the Torah. His Talmidim, however, didn't follow him in this respect. So their linen garments that they were wearing, if they had like a linen undershirt or something, they didn't put tzitzis on it. So that's why they were hiding it from the Rebbe. Omer lehen b'ni loikach shenisi lachem sedin b'tzitzis beisham mepoichim beisil mechayvin v'alacha kadir beisilo. He says he realized that they weren't putting tzitzis on their linen garments, and he says the halacha is like beisilo, and beisilo says that you are chayiv to put tzitzis on it, even if it is made out of linen. So what's their reason? V'inhu, and they sabri gezer mishum ksus lailam. They understood. They said even though the halacha is like Beis Hillel, they're still afraid that maybe you're going to end up wearing it in the nighttime. Like Ksus Laila, in nighttime there's no mitzvah of tzitzis, and therefore the baguette should go back to being usher to mix linen and wool. So even though in the daytime it's fine, but they were afraid then maybe it's going to go into the nighttime, so therefore they didn't want to put tzitzis on it ever. So that was sort of a tangent. But the point we were trying to make is that there's a mitzvah to take a shower. V'tiznach mishalayim nafshi nashisi taiva.
But when you have like a four-cornered baguette, is it an obligation to put tzitzit on it? Like, if you don't have baguette, that's fine. But if you do have it, so one shot that take precedence over, the fear of at night not being an obligation, because otherwise you shouldn't wear a baguette with four corners, right? That's the obligation.
Yeah, so you're saying, on the one hand, they recognize that it needs tzitzis, but they're not putting tzitzis on it because they're afraid that they're going to end up wearing it during the night.
Right.
But right now they're breaking the rules because they're wearing a four-cornered baguette without tzitzis on it.
Right.
So usually whenever it comes to derabanan, like let's say not blowing a shofar on Shabbos, when we're afraid that something bad's going to happen, so they can say shevel taisa, don't do anything, even though by not doing anything you're not going to do the mitzvah. So here also it's a shevel taisa, right? You don't do anything, just don't put the tzitzis on it, even though you're going to be breaking the biblical rules, right? So let's say mid-dairais you're supposed to put tzitzis on it.
Right.
Mid-rabbanan we're afraid you're going to come to Ksus Laila at a time when there's no mitzvah of tzitzis, and therefore you're going to get into trouble with shadnas. So it's like not blowing the shofar on Shabbos, right?
Tzitzis can only be made out of wool?
Yeah. I think so, yeah. Anyway, so v'tiznach mishal nafshi nashisi taiva. So we have this pasuk here. My v'tiznach mishalom nafshi. Amar v'bo zuad lakas ner b'Shabbos. That's referring to lighting the candles on Shabbos. Because if a person doesn't have a candle to light with, then he wouldn't have the peace. V'tiznach is like a lashon of not having something, right? Or how do they translate v'tiznach? Tiznach is to be mazniach is usually to leave something alone, right? Not to. Anyway, I don't have peace if I don't have the light on Shabbos because I don't see where I'm going. I'm going to trip on stuff. I'm not going to have the shalom bayis. Amar Rav Aboz v'lakas ner b'Shabbos nashisi taiva. Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah zu beis hamerchatz. That's referring to a bathhouse. Rav Yechanan Amar zu rechitas yadayim v'raglayim b'chamin. That's referring to washing your hands and your feet. Rabbi Yitzchak Navcha Amar zu mita na'a. That's referring to a nice bed. V'kelim noim, a nice kelim, like dishes, shaleh on top of the table. Rav Abba Amar zu mita mutzas. That's referring to the bed that's made. I think they would use beds when they were at the table. V'isha mikushetes the Talmidei Chachamim, and the wife is adorned for her husband, the Talmid Chacham. So these are all referring to different things that are supposed to be done for Shabbos. The wife is going to look nice, the table, the chairs, the dishes, a shower before Shabbos, the candles. Tan Rabbanan, Eza Ashir, who is a rich man? Kol sheish lenachas ruach be'ashroi di Rabbi Meir. Anyone who is satisfied with what he has, the classic Birkei Avos line, Samech bechelkai. Siman mat kas. So we have other opinions that are abbreviated into the mat kas. Rab Tarfon Omer, kol sheish lai kuf kramim umea sadais v'kuf avadim sha'ivdim bohen. He's more specific of what's considered wealthy. If you have 100 vineyards, 100 fields, and 100 slaves that are working in these different fields of yours. Rabbi Akiva Omer kol sheish leisha na b'maisim. If you have a woman who has good deeds, then you're rich. Rabbi Yossi Omer kol sheish lebeis akisei samach l'shulchanai. If you have a bathroom close to your table, which used to be a big privilege. Tanya Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer ein madlikin b'tzri. You can't light your Shabbos candles with tzri. So this is something that smells good. So this is the opposite of what we were talking about before, about the itron, which smells bad. Don't use something that smells really good, because since it smells so wonderful, you're going to take some of the oil out maybe smear it on your face or something, right? You're gonna take some out, and then by taking the oil out, that's like putting the fire out a little. In a sense, it's like putting the fire out on Shabbos. I don't know where we should stop. Maybe because it's going to spritz and it's going to burn your house down. She says, yeah, there's two reasons. First of all, using tree is not good because it's going to spark and it's going to burn your house down. And another reason is because you may take some of the oil